Most of you watching this will never make consistent money trading. Not because you're not smart enough, not because you don't work hard enough. You will fail for the same boring, predictable reason 95% of people in this room fail. And by the end of this video, I'm going to make you extremely uncomfortable by telling you exactly what that reason is. 5:45 a.m., no alarm, Marcus is already awake. Running the same math he's run every morning for 6 years. How much can he afford to lose today without changing his life? That number used to keep him up at night. Now it's just Tuesday. He's still going to lose money this year. Not because the market beat him, because he's about to beat himself in the same exact way he has for 6 years, and he still doesn't see it. 300 miles away, Elena is asleep. She'll wake up at 6:30, make coffee, and not look at a chart until 9:25. Same markets, same 24 hours, same access to information, actually less since she ignores most of it on purpose. She will be profitable this year, not because she's smarter than Marcus. She isn't, because she stopped doing something Marcus still can't stop doing, and it has nothing to do with strategy. Here's the part that's going to sting. Your discipline problem was never about willpower. Willpower doesn't exist the way you think it does. It's not a muscle you didn't train hard enough. It's a myth you've been sold so an entire industry can keep charging you for courses on trading psychology instead of telling you the one-sentence truth. You built a system that requires you to be strong in the exact moments you are guaranteed to be weak. That's not a you problem. That's a design flaw. And today, we're going to rebuild the design. So today, instead of giving you another list of trading commandments you'll forget by Thursday, I'm going to walk you through an actual day, hour by hour. What discipline really looks like when nobody's watching, when there's no camera, when it's just you and a decision that takes 4 seconds to make and can cost you a month of profits if you get it wrong. Let's start with the myth, because you need to see it die before we build something better. The myth says discipline is a feeling. You wake up motivated, you grit your teeth, you force yourself to follow the rules through sheer effort. Under this myth, some days you have discipline and some days you don't, depending on how much sleep you got or how your last trade went. This is why most traders are inconsistent. They're not inconsistent because the market is random. They're inconsistent because they've tied their execution to their emotional state, and their emotional state changes 40 times a day. Here's the reframe. Discipline is not a feeling you wait for. It's a structure you built when you were calm, that operates on your behalf when you're not calm. Elena didn't decide at 9:31 a.m. whether to follow her stop loss. She decided that 3 years ago when she built the rule. This morning at 9:31, there's no decision left to make. The decision already happened. All that's left is execution. That distinction is the entire video. Write it down if you need to. Discipline isn't making the right choice in the moment. Discipline is removing the moment entirely. Now, let's go back to Marcus, because his story matters more than his mistakes. Marcus was an operations manager at a logistics company for 11 years before he started trading full-time. Sharp guy. The kind of person who color-coded his spreadsheets for fun. When he started trading, he did what smart, competent people do with every new skill. He studied, he read 40 books, he built a strategy with 9 confirming indicators, RSI for momentum, MACD for trend, 3 different moving averages, volume profile, a sentiment tool, and 2 proprietary scripts he found in a forum that promised to filter out false signals. His charts looked like a cockpit. Every color available was in use. For the first 4 months, it worked. Sort of. He'd catch a few good trades. Then he'd freeze on others because 5 of his 9 indicators agreed and 4 didn't, and he'd spend 11 minutes deciding what to do while the trade moved without him. He started adding rules to fix the indecision. The rules multiplied. By month 7, his trading plan was 14 pages long, and he still couldn't execute a single trade in under 2 minutes because there was too much to check. He blew through 3 accounts, $61,000 combined. Not because the strategy was bad on paper, because a system that requires that much real-time judgment cannot survive contact with a moving market. Every added rule was supposed to create more control. Instead, it created more moments where a human being had to make a decision under pressure. and humans under pressure make emotional decisions dressed up as logical ones. Elena worked as a labor and delivery nurse for 9 years before she started trading. No finance background, no economics degree. When she got into trading, she didn't build a cockpit. She built 3 rules. She trades 1 setup. She risks the same fixed percentage on every position, no exceptions, no just this once. It's a really good one. And she has a hard stop that executes automatically, not a mental stop she promises herself she'll honor. That's it. 3 rules. People assume she must be missing something, that surely there's more sophistication hiding underneath. There isn't. She told me once that the entire skill of trading, for her, was not developing more insight into the market. It was building a version of her decision-making that didn't need to be trusted in the moment. Same market, same 24 hours in the day, same access to information, arguably less in her case since she ignores most of it. Marcus knew more about market structure than Elena ever will. And Elena is still trading, not because she's smarter, because she made the moment of decision boring, small, and automatic, while Marcus turned every single moment into a live negotiation with his own nervous system. Now, back to that actual day, because this is where discipline either exists or it doesn't, and it has nothing to do with strategy. 7:15 a.m. Elena checks exactly 2 things: her economic calendar for anything scheduled that day, and her own physical state. Did she sleep? Is she anxious about something unrelated? Did she have an argument with someone this morning? This isn't self-care content. It's risk management. A trader who's dysregulated before the market opens is a trader who will find a reason to break a rule by 10 a.m., and she knows this about herself the way a pilot knows not to fly exhausted. Marcus, meanwhile, is already 3 tabs deep. A Market Open newsletter, 2 Twitter threads about overnight futures, and a YouTube video titled, "This Changes Everything for Markets Today." None of it is wrong information exactly. It's just noise wearing a suit, and he's letting it set his emotional temperature before the bell even rings. 9:25 a.m. Elena opens one chart. 1. She already knows her setup. She's looking for it, not hunting for a reason to trade. If it's not there, she closes the laptop and goes back to whatever she was doing. This is the part nobody shows you in trading content, because closed my laptop and did nothing doesn't get clicks. But it is, without exaggeration, the single most repeated action of every consistently profitable trader I've ever studied. Not the trade. The absence of a trade when there's no trade to take. Marcus has 11 tabs open. He's cross-referencing 4 sources. He sees a setup that matches 6 of his 9 confirmations. Not all 9, 6. There's a small argument happening in his head right now, and it sounds like this. It's close enough, the market's clearly moving, I don't want to miss this one. That sentence, I don't want to miss this one, is the single most expensive sentence in trading. It has bankrupted more accounts than any bad strategy ever has because it's not a strategic thought. It's fear wearing the costume of opportunity. He takes the trade, not because his plan told him to, because his fear told him to, and his plan was flexible enough to let fear drive. 10:40 a.m. The trade moves against Elena. Her stop executes. She doesn't watch it happen in slow motion, agonizing over whether to move it just a little to give it room. The order was placed before the emotional stakes existed, back when she was calm, and it fires without asking her opinion. She logs it in a spreadsheet. Entry, exit, 1 line about what she observed, nothing about how she feels. And she's done thinking about that trade. It happened. It's closed. There will be another one. 10:40 a.m. for Marcus looks different. His trade also moves against him, but his stop was mental, not automatic. Around here, give or take. When price approaches it, a negotiation starts. Maybe it bounces. Maybe I should widen it slightly since it's clearly just a wick. He widens it. Twice. By the time he actually exits, he's lost 2.5 times what his original plan called for, and he spends the next 90 minutes replaying it, checking the chart every 4 minutes to see if it would have worked if he'd held longer. It wouldn't have. But that's not really the question his brain is asking. His brain is asking to be told he's not incompetent, and the market cannot answer that question, no matter how long he stares at it. This is the part where I need to name the actual forces at work here, because be more disciplined is useless advice without knowing what you're fighting. The first force is what I'll call moment inflation. Every individual decision in trading feels enormous while you're inside it and completely irrelevant 3 days later. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a trade that matters and a trade that doesn't, so it treats all of them like emergencies. The fix isn't willpower, it's pre-deciding as much as possible before you're inside the moment, so there's less left to inflate. The second is what therapists call variable reward, and casinos understood it before traders did. When a reward, a winning trade, arrives unpredictably, it creates a stronger compulsive pull than a reward that arrives on a fixed schedule. This is why the near miss, "I would have made money if I'd just held," is more addictive than an actual loss. Your brain logs it as almost winning, and almost winning is the most re-engaging feeling there is. The 95% chase that feeling without knowing that's what they're chasing. The 5% have built systems specifically designed to remove them from decisions in the exact moments when that pull is strongest. The third is what I'll call the complexity shield. Adding indicators, adding rules, adding confirmations. It feels like diligence. It feels like you're being careful, being thorough, doing your homework. Sometimes it is that. But past a certain point, complexity stops being analysis and starts being a hiding place. If a trade fails, you can point to the 11th indicator that should have warned you, and the failure becomes a technical oversight instead of an emotional one. It protects your identity more than it protects your account. Marcus's 14-page plan wasn't rigor. It was armor. The fourth is outcome addiction, and this one is the hardest to hear. Most traders, if you're honest with them, care more about being right on any given trade than they care about their process being sound over 100 trades. Being right feels like validation. Following a boring rule and losing anyway feels like nothing. Or worse, feels like the rule failed. So the brain quietly starts optimizing for the feeling of being right in the moment rather than for the account balance 6 months from now. Those two goals look similar from a distance. Up close, they pull in opposite directions constantly. Now here's what actually replaces each of these, and none of it is exciting, which is exactly the point. Shift 1 directly answers moment inflation. Every decision that can be made in advance should be made in advance. In writing, when you are calm and bored and nothing is on the line. Not, "I'll exit around resistance," a number. Not, "I'll risk what feels right," a fixed percentage written down before the session starts. The goal is that by the time you're in a live trade, there should be nothing left to decide except whether the pre-written conditions are met. Yes or no. Elena's entire morning routine exists to push every possible decision backward in time, away from the moment when her nervous system is compromised. Shift 2 answers variable reward by making your reward structure boring on purpose. This means tracking process adherence as a number, separate from profit and loss. Did you follow the rule? Yes or no, regardless of outcome. A trader who follows their rule and loses is having a successful day by this metric, even though it feels wrong. A trader who breaks their rule and wins is having a failed day. Even though it feels great, this feels insane the first few weeks. It's the only way to stop your brain from being trained by randomness instead of by your own decisions. Shift 3 answers the complexity shield by cutting, not adding. Pick one setup. Learn it until you could describe it to a stranger in 4 sentences. If you cannot explain your entire strategy in under 30 seconds, it is not a strategy. It's a hiding place with extra steps. The unlikely winners in this space are almost always running something simple enough to fit on an index card. That's not a coincidence. Simplicity is what survives contact with a moving market, because there's less of it that can be rationalized away in real time. Shift 4 answers outcome addiction with a specific practice. After every single trade, write 1 sentence about your process and 0 sentences about how you feel. Did I follow my entry rule? Did I follow my exit rule? Did I risk the amount I planned? That's the entire journal entry some days. It sounds almost too simple to matter. It's the single habit that, more than any other, separates people who improve over years from people who repeat the same mistake for years while calling it bad luck. Underneath all four of these shifts is something bigger than technique, and this is where the real identity change happens. Marcus thinks of himself as a trader who is trying to find the right system. Elena doesn't think of herself as someone hunting for edge at all. She thinks of herself as someone executing a process, the same way a surgeon doesn't reinvent the operation each time they scrub in. When you're hunting for edge, every loss threatens the hunt. Maybe the system's wrong. Maybe you need a new indicator. Maybe you need to research more. When you're executing a process, a loss is just a loss. It was priced into the plan before you ever opened the platform. Nothing about your identity needs to be renegotiated because the outcome was already accounted for. This is the actual identity shift, and it's less romantic than most trading content wants it to be. You stop being someone who's trying to become a great trader through insight and effort, and you become someone who runs a small, boring operation with fixed rules day after day, regardless of how you feel about any single one of them. When you stop needing to be right and start needing to be consistent, the anxiety that drives most bad decisions simply has nowhere to attach itself. There's no decision left for it to corrupt. And here's the part almost nobody wants to say out loud on this platform, because it doesn't make for compelling footage. If your trading feels exciting most days, that's usually a warning sign, not a good one. Excitement means you're deviating from plan, oversizing a position because it feels right, or trading a setup you didn't practice because the market looks unusually dramatic today. The professionals I've studied describe their best months as the ones where nothing memorable happened. Same entries, same exits, same small percentage risked, over and over, until the math does what math does over a large enough sample. Boredom isn't the absence of skill. In this specific field, it's usually evidence of it. I want you to sit with that for a second, because it inverts almost everything the industry sells you. The content that gets the most attention in this space is built entirely around excitement. Huge green candles, dramatic reversals, someone screaming about a 100-bagger. That content is optimized to be watched, not to be replicated. The actual skill looks like Elena's Tuesday, 2 minutes of chart review, 1 trade or 0 trades, a 1-line journal entry, and the rest of the day spent doing something completely unrelated to markets. There is no thumbnail for that. It doesn't need one. It's just what works. So let's close the loop on Marcus and Elena, because you deserve to know where they ended up, and it's not as clean as a highlight reel. Marcus is still trading. He didn't quit, and he didn't have some cinematic breakthrough moment either. What happened was slower and less dramatic. After the third blown account, he stopped adding rules and started removing them, one at a time, until he was down to a single setup and a hard, automated stop-loss he genuinely could not override in the moment. It took him roughly a year to unlearn the instinct to make trading feel like an intellectual pursuit worthy of a 14-page plan. He'll tell you now that the hardest trade he ever took wasn't a big loss. It was the first time he sat in front of a clean setup, felt the old 6 out of 9 urge to rationalize a slightly worse trade, and simply closed the laptop instead. Nothing happened. No dopamine hit, no story. Just a Tuesday that looked exactly like every other Tuesday, which is precisely the point. Elena is exactly where she was, doing exactly what she was doing, which is the highest compliment you can pay a trader. Same 3 rules, same fixed risk, a slightly larger account than 5 years ago, built through nothing more sophisticated than repetition and the refusal to negotiate with herself in the moment. Here's your actual choice, and it's the only choice that matters in this entire video. You can keep adding more indicators, more confirmations, more information, more excitement, and call that progress, the way 95% of people in this space do. Or you can start subtracting. Fewer decisions left for the moment. Fewer rules that require judgment under pressure. Less to negotiate with yourself about at 10:40 a.m. when the trade is moving against you and your nervous system is offering opinions it has no business offering. Discipline was never about being strong enough to make the right call under pressure. It's about building a life boring enough that you're almost never under pressure to make a call at all. Everything else is just decoration on top of that one idea. There's one more piece of this that most people skip past, and it's the piece that actually determines whether any of what I just described survives past week 3. Systems don't fail because they're wrong. They fail because nobody accounts for the boring stretch in the middle, the 15 or 20 trades in a row, where the process is followed perfectly and the results are flat or slightly negative. This is where almost everyone quits the plan. Not because the plan broke, but because the plan didn't feel rewarding fast enough. Elena has a name for this stretch. She calls it the tax. Not a punishment, not a signal that something's wrong, just the cost of admission for the payoff that shows up later in the sample. She pays it without renegotiating the rules. The same way you pay rent without reevaluating whether you still believe in having a home. Marcus never had a name for that stretch. Back when he was blowing accounts, every flat period felt like evidence the system was broken. So he'd tweak it, add a filter, remove a filter, chase a version of the strategy that skipped the boring part entirely. There isn't one. There's no system, no indicator, no combination of confirmations that removes the flat stretch. It's not a flaw to be engineered out. It's the actual mechanism by which an edge gets paid. If you can't sit through it without touching anything, the edge never has time to work. This is worth saying plainly, because it's the part that separates people who read this and nod along from people who actually change something on Monday. Naming the tax in advance. Deciding today that a losing streak inside your rules is not information, it's just the fee, removes almost all of the emotional charge from the moment it actually happens. You don't discover in real time whether you can handle a 5-trade losing streak. You decided in advance that you could, back when you were calm, the same way Elena decided her stop loss 3 years before this particular Tuesday. That's the whole method. Decide once while nothing is on the line, so there's nothing left to decide when something finally is. So the real question isn't whether you have the discipline to follow your rules today, it's whether you built rules simple enough and decided early enough that discipline was never required in the moment at all.